This is still a pretty rare bird when it comes to smartphones. Most of us are still rocking full-screen phones, but the prospects of a chameleon phone are really enticing, like the Samsung Z Flip 5, a foldable flip phone with a substantial price tag. But is a foldable phone like this one truly worth it? What does it do better than our regular phone, and is it truly all amazing features and virtually no downsides? I will find out in my full hands-on review. Let's see what you're getting here. What is the Samsung Galaxy Z Flip series? The Z Flip series is basically a remake of some classic flip phones initially popularized by mobile handsets like Motorola and Nokia. This was my first smartphone back in the 90s, and this was my second. I love this flip phone, but check out how small the screen was. Things have changed big time, but that's kind of why I'm excited about rekindling my relationship with a flip. The Flip 5 has a huge edge-to-edge 6.7-inch dynamic Amoled main screen, which in plain English means it should be brighter and more colorful. It's also got a huge exterior screen that Samsung calls the Flex window, and that clocks in at about 3.4 inches, and it's also a bright AMOLED display. The Flex window is bigger than both previous generation Samsung phones, and while these windows have previously been best for things like glanceable information like time or the weather, Samsung has actually worked to make this display a lot less secondary. More on what you can do with it in a couple minutes. The real innovation here for me is the fact you can fully open the Z Flip 5 and barely notice the crease in the middle, making it feel more like using a slightly taller and thinner Galaxy S23 Plus. Right off the bat, the phone does feel slim and light when it's open. It actually feels a lot less clunky than my iPhone, which is my day-to-day smartphone. Like other members of the Samsung Galaxy family, the Z Flip phones run on Android with Samsung's One UI layer on top, which essentially helps them help you customize Android. Let's dive into what has improved with the Samsung Galaxy Z Flip 5, and we will start with that Flex window. The most noticeable improvement of the Z Flip 5 is the cover display going from a small 2-inch display to a much larger 3.4-inch version. Yes, it may only be 720p resolution, but it takes up nearly the entire cover with just a small cutout for the cameras. More importantly, you can see not only glanceable information, but you can also interact with it by swiping to access some really handy widgets like weather and calendar. Because of the extra screen real estate, dismissing notifications without opening the phone makes a lot more sense, but if you're feeling adventurous, you can also configure the cover to launch a small subset of Android apps, things like Google Maps, Messages, or Weather. You activate the Flex window by double tapping the screen. Then you can swipe down from the top to access your quick settings, or swipe left to see your notifications, or swipe right to get into the phone and do a bit more. I will say it can be a little bit maddening trying to navigate tiny PIN codes when you're trying to access the phone, but otherwise it's quite easy to use. The Hinge is another cool feature of this phone that helps make it feel really good in your hands. The Hinge features what Samsung calls a droplet-style design, which allows the phone to fully close without any gaps. It also makes a satisfying sound when you close it, which harkens back to the late 1990s, back when it was so much more satisfying to hang up on someone by slamming your phone shut than by pressing a virtual button. The Hinge also feels more durable in the sense that you can not only open the phone completely flat and close it with no gap, but you literally get almost anything in between. Open the display at an angle like a laptop and it'll keep that stable position. This is useful if you want to prop the phone up and take pictures using the front-facing camera hands-free, but you can also use it to watch media or scroll through content. In fact, this is where Samsung's One UI scores points. It also has a special mode for this called Flex Mode, which puts the active app on the top portion of the folded display, while the bottom portion gets reserved for some useful controls depending on the app. The Wi-Fi also got bumped up to Wi-Fi 6E, which translates to faster networking speeds over the 6 GHz band if you have a router that supports it. The phone also runs Android 13. Let's get into detail about my experience with this phone. Samsung sent me this phone on loan for a couple of weeks, and since it is being returned, I don't generally fully load loaner phones with all of the apps and toys I would use on a regular day-to-day basis, mainly for privacy and security reasons. Now, with that said, I was able to use a lot of the basics of this phone to test out the user experience. What I really liked was the shape, weight, and form factor. There's no mistaking this is a gorgeous phone and well made. Even when just using the main interior display, the phone is a gorgeous piece of handiwork. The screen is as bright and colorful and easy on the eyes as you could want it to be, and even the crease becomes virtually invisible while you're using it. After a while, I completely forgot it was even there. Even so, I love the size, placement, and options that are available so far on the Flex window. The phone is really versatile when it comes to how you want to use it. Keep it closed and slide it into a pocket or purse, or leave it open and it's still really transportable. Even with a case on, which my demo unit has, I would absolutely not call this phone bulky, and I'd be happy to bring it anywhere. Hey, since you're still here with me, I'd like to think it's because you're enjoying this video or finding it helpful, and if so, please consider hitting me with a super thanks. I spent almost 8 hours testing, comparing, writing, shooting, and editing this video, and it's just me here on the channel, so a super thanks from you, you, would be really appreciated, and it does help me keep making more videos that you might like too. The real conundrum here is whether or not the Z Flip 5 is a worthy choice over a traditional phone. Let's run down a few of the factors. There's somewhat of an unknown, I guess you could say, when it comes to durability. This means that you do need to be a little bit more careful using your phone, since this inner screen may be more sensitive to scratches and punctures. By foldable phone standards, the Z Flip 5 is quite durable, but make no mistake, you will want to handle this one with care. Dust considers to be a major nemesis of the Z Flip 5, which is why the phone only gets an IPX8 water resistance and dust resistance rating. This certification essentially means that you can get the phone wet, but getting any grit inside it could be a serious issue. And then there's the camera. Just about all flagship phones have a camera array that includes a high megapixel wide lens along with an ultra-wide and telephoto. The Z Flip 5 only ticks the ultra-wide lens checkbox while having a mid-range 12 megapixel wide lens and no telephoto lens at all. This might not be a huge deal if you're upgrading from a smartphone from around 2010, but if you're spoiled with the kind of pictures you get from an iPhone Pro 13 or a Samsung Galaxy S22, you might find it a bit of a downgrade. That being said, the photos still look really good under decent lighting conditions thanks to Samsung's polished camera app. Samsung outfitted the Z Flip 5 with a 3700 mAh battery, which is actually about 5% smaller than the Galaxy S23 battery, or about 20% smaller than the S23 Plus battery. This means you shouldn't expect all-day battery life during regular use unless you cut down on the inner screen time. Now, one tip in prolonging the battery life is to disable the always-on display feature on the cover display. Of course, if you're prone to using the Flex window more often, you might not need to light up the whole big screen, and you might see better battery life anyhow. Overall, yes, I'm a latecomer to the flip and fold phones, so maybe I'm a cheap date here, but I really like this phone. The design looks cool and it lets me do a lot more. I think it actually feels really sturdy and durable, like a true premium smartphone. While there are some trade-offs, like a slightly smaller battery and apps that may not be optimized for all the different screens, dust will also be your kryptonite, but all of these aren't deal breakers. I really liked my Flip 5 experience, and I think you will too. The Samsung Galaxy Z Flip 5 here sells for about $999 US or $12.99 Canadian. You can check out the competition, of course, to see what else is out there. Take a look at one of Google's more recent Pixel phone offerings, or see how you can use an iPhone to look up almost anything with just the camera right now.